Welcome to today's lesson on equivalent fractions. We are going to begin today's lesson by reviewing what a fraction is. A fraction is part of a whole. So as you can see, we have a fraction bar on our screen. Now this fraction bar is split into two parts. So we're going to write this fraction with a 2 as the denominator to show that it is split into two different pieces. Now for a numerator, we're going to shade in one part of this fraction. And since we shaded in one part out of two pieces in all, our fraction is going to say that we have 1 out of 2 pieces, or a fraction of 1/2. So now let's talk about equivalent fractions. Equivalent fractions keep the same value that you had before, just changing the number of pieces in the whole. So we have 1 out of 2 pieces, or 1/2 of this fraction bar shaded. But what happens when I now change this fraction bar into fourths? So I have now taken this fraction bar and I've split it into 4 pieces in the whole instead of 2. So I'm going to write my denominator as fourths because we now have 4 pieces in the whole. But as you can see, we still have the same area shaded. We just broke it into smaller pieces. So I have 2 parts shaded. So that means I have 2/4 of this fraction bar shaded. So an equivalent fraction is telling me that these have an equal value to each other, that 1/2 is equal to 2/4. The only difference is the size of the pieces. So what would happen if we tried to say that 1/2 was equal to 1/4? Well, let's go ahead and let's draw a fraction bar with fourths. And now we've shaded in 1/4. And the purpose of doing this is so that you can see that if you keep the numerator the same and you change the denominator, your fraction is going to be different. You're changing the size of the pieces when you change your denominator. So you can see that 1/2 is not equivalent to 1/4. Let's go ahead and take a moment to look at some of the math behind equivalent fractions. As you can see on the screen, we have the 1/2 that we began with, and we're trying to find an equivalent fraction for 1/2. So our next step was to split it into fourths, and as you can see, we have 2/4 on the screen. This has an equal value, just a different number of pieces. This time, we're going to split it into 16 pieces. So our denominator is going to be 16. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pieces out of 16 shaded in. Are you starting to see a pattern? To find an equivalent fraction, you need to either multiply or divide your numerator and denominator by the same number. For example, 1 times 2 equals 2, 2 times 2 equals 4. Now you don't always have to multiply or divide by the number 2. As you can see, we can also multiply or divide by different numbers. 2 times 4 equals 8, and 4 times 4 equals 16. As long as you are multiplying or dividing by the same number with your numerator and denominator, you will find an equivalent fraction. Let's go ahead and practice what we've learned with a word problem. Sarah wants to donate 1/2 of her savings to her classroom fundraiser. She has $16 in her savings. Written as a fraction, how many dollars will she donate? Well, first we want to show a fraction bar that she's going to donate 1/2 of her savings. So we're going to shade in 1 out of our 2 pieces in our fraction bar. And that's going to show that we understand she's going to donate 1/2. So I'm also going to write down this information as well. 1/2. And we're going to find an equivalent fraction to 1/2 to show how much money she will donate. So we need to go ahead and change this fraction bar into 16 pieces to show each of her $16. So let's go ahead and split this into our 16 pieces to show $16. And since we now have 16 pieces in our whole, we're going to have a denominator of 16. So now we need to count how many dollars she's going to give away. And we already have 1/2 of our fraction shaded, so we need to count the shaded parts. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we know that 1/2 is equivalent to 8/16. And we can check our work by multiplying our numerator and our denominator by the same number, and 1 times 8 equals 8, and 2 times 8 equals 16. So that means that Sarah's going to donate 8 out of her $16. Let's go ahead and practice one more time using equivalent fractions. There are 3 fractions on the left-hand side of the screen and 3 fractions on the right-hand side of the screen. You need to match up which of the fractions are equivalent to the other. So one of these fractions on the right-hand side of the screen is equivalent to 4/9. One of these colored fractions on the right-hand side of the screen is equivalent to 3/6. And one of these fractions is equivalent to 5/7. All right, go ahead and solve. Let's start with 4/9. If we multiply our numerator and our denominator by 6, we're going to get an equivalent fraction of 24/54. For 3/6, if we divide our numerator and our denominator by 3, we're going to find an equivalent fraction of 1/2. And 5/7. If we multiply our numerator and our denominator by 2, we have an equivalent fraction of 10/14. Great job! Let's review what you've learned in today's lesson. An equivalent fraction is changing the number of pieces that you have in the whole. You're not going to be changing the value of the number that you have. For example, 1/2 is equivalent to 2/4 because it's still the same value, except you have twice as many pieces in the whole as you had before, but you're not changing the size of the whole. To find an equivalent fraction, you can multiply your numerator and denominator by the same number, or you can divide your numerator and denominator by the same number. But remember, if you're going to be dividing your numerator and denominator, you need to make sure that you can divide the numerator and the denominator to equal whole numbers.